Yeah, sometimes you're just feeling it, you know what I'm saying? You're just feeling it. And I want to feel this way forever. Yeah, check it out. Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 16 of In a Good Way podcast. My special guest today is Debbie Gleason. Debbie is a therapist, a licensed therapist that has earned her bachelor's and master's in social work and mental health. So welcome, Debbie. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Yeah. Real quick, before we go right into it, I guess it's kind of funny. We were talking about, I actually didn't really know how Debbie, I guess, found me. I was asking her like, oh, how did you, find me? And I guess, we kind of went over that. Like, I guess you were, because you had a dream. So I guess we'll kind of hop right into it. I'll let Debbie explain about her that particular dream, because I had made this video about, the ego and the condor prophecy. For anyone that hasn't seen it, it's on my channel. You could check it out. Just look at for the one that says ego and condor prophecy. And I had this dream about, the condor. And then, in the dream, I said how I was telling someone that, I know from going to like ceremonies, and I was telling them like, it's time, they're here, it's time. And I guess you had a similar dream. And I guess you can explain how I guess you were looking for something similar. And I guess that's how you stumbled up like across my channel. And then you messaged me and then you told me about your dream, which was, it sounded so similar. So if you don't mind, I guess we'll start off right away by sharing like your experience with that.
Sharing my dream. Okay, so I had there were just similar themes. So in my dream, I vividly remember just being in a store and I was looking for something and I couldn't find it. And I think when I reviewed it again and I really thought about it, I was like, I was in CVS and I couldn't find, it was like a cream. I was looking for some type of cream, for like my face, I don't know. And I couldn't find it. So I stepped out of there and there's the sliding doors. And when I'm going through that doorway, I'm all of a sudden just transported to where I live now.
Oh, wow.
But the house was not the same house. And so it was just the same grounds. And I'm just confused, like, wow, what just happened? Like this, I know that was not normal. So I'm standing there and I look up and there's a large bird. I don't know what kind of bird, but it's a large bird and it was carrying something. And as it was getting closer, it was a person. And the bird dropped him off on my front lawn and he's speaking to me. He just started speaking to me right away. There was no pause. There was nothing. It was just immediate contact. And it was telepathic. So it was like, I could hear him in my mind. And I was, I guess, thinking, or what I thought was thinking, he was already responding to. So he was like in my mind. So it's a very different, I've never had dreams like that before, at least not that I can recall. And at that time, I wasn't looking at anything about telepathy or, extraterrestrials or anything like that. But this person was definitely not human. And I could tell that only by, I don't remember what he looked like. The only thing I remember was the skin color was different. Like I want to say there was like some type of purplish to it, but not a very dark purple. It was just, there was something off about it. But in it, so I'm getting information from him. We're having a conversation. We're talking in this like telepathic way, I guess. And all of a sudden I run inside to tell somebody it's time. And then when I come back out, there's other people being dropped down as well.
Wow.
So that's really what I remember from it. And then what I was doing research, I don't know if I was trying to look up themes that I remembered from my dream, or if I was looking at the eagle and the condor prophecy, but somehow I ended up on your YouTube. And when I heard your video, I was like, wow, this is very similar, or it feels similar to me. And I said, can I send you my video of my dream?
No, and thank you. And just real quick, so were the other people that were getting dropped off, were they like the same skin complexion as the one that was speaking with you?
I don't know, because they were, you know, where I live, it's more the houses are a little more spread out. So
Mm,
it wasn't like I could see the people right next to me and like kind of know who they were. It was just they were all being dropped off in random locations, but I could see them coming like in the sky. It was almost like seeing hot air balloons or something. It was like I could see these things coming.
mm,
But I don't know what they looked like. But
wow.
to me, I had a really good feeling in in my body and mind, I guess, of like, wow, you know, to me it felt very like uplifting, like hopeful of like maybe something is going to change or,
Mm.
you know, something for the better, I guess. Yeah.
No, definitely. And no, and thank you so much once again for, like I feel like the same, right? Like once you told me, I was like, "Oh, okay, I felt like it was something guided,
Yeah.
us to even me, something guided me to share these stories because
Right.
even though it may seem like I do this, I guess with no effort, there always is a struggle. Before I post videos,
Hmm.
there is some kind of internal struggle where I'm like,
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
or I'll say like, who cares? Nobody really cares anyways, or things
Hmm.
like that. Like,
Hmm. There's
even
like
if
that
I
inner critic voice, like, yeah,
definitely, definitely.
who are
And I
you
mean,
to
you
be
might,
sharing this and
yeah,
stuff?
yeah, and you might, I guess, as a therapist, you might and I'll ask you about that later. That's why I'm really interested in asking you about that. But yeah, just to go back to the dream, in mind, see, that's what it was. I was really excited. I ran inside
Yeah.
and I
Hmm.
told this friend that I know from, already like a spiritual circle, like where we go
Right.
to,
Hmm.
sweat ceremonies, like
Yeah.
native,
Hmm.
sweat ceremonies together. And I was really happy and I was like, it's time. They're here, they're here. And that's what I found interesting. I guess I asked you, or I think you told me when you had the dream. You said you had it around April. And in
Yeah. So
April, oh, go ahead, go ahead.
yeah. So I had started documenting my dreams or like whenever I could get to it or remember. And I started that I think in November of not this past November, but the November. Well, actually, no, I don't remember now when I started it, but I guess less than a year I've been writing about my dreams. And so this one I wrote down, and that one was on April 10th. I had
Mm,
it. Yeah. So
wow.
that's the only way I remembered was because like I wrote it down and I just thought it was such a, I don't know, something about it to me. I was like, there's a lot of meaning. Like this is important. But I actually told my mom about it the next
Oh, wow.
day. And she, you know, she actually told me, she's like, I wouldn't share that with anybody.
Oh,
Like she,
wow.
yeah. And I was like, okay. But part of me felt like it needed to be shared. And so I think that's why I like told her about it because I was like, I got a good feeling from it. I feel like I should be doing something with it, but I don't know what. And she was like, I wouldn't share that with anybody.
Wow.
And yeah, yeah. And she was like, I think it's just more personal for you. Like maybe because she knows I was going through a lot at that time. She was like, I think
Mm,
it's just more personal for you that, you know, good things are going to be coming for you. And I was like, but this felt more of like on a bigger scale, you know, especially because there were other people coming down to
mm,
other places. You know, it wasn't just for me. So I did end up sharing it, I think a week before I found your video.
mm.
I ended up posting it on my social media. And a part of that was really hard too, because I was like, this is, yeah, this is out there. Like people are gonna be like, oh, she's talking to aliens now. You know?
Yeah, no, and so what pushed you, what gave you that extra push to share it? Like,
No, I don't know. That day it was funny because, you know, to be honest, I looked a mess
mm,
and but something inside me was like now is the time to do it. And I was like, I don't look right. Like I should, you know, do something and like have better lighting, you know, and like have some type of setup. But something internally was like just like do it. Like you need to do it. So I was like, okay, so I just shared it and did it. And yeah, and when I had posted it, one of my friends was like, it looked like, you know, you had really like planned that or something. Like it just flowed really well, me talking about it rather than like being nervous or like, you know. And so I was like, I do think maybe I was guided to do that. Of like this is the time. Maybe not back in April, but like
mm.
now. Say it now.
Oh,
You know what I mean?
oh,
So
wow.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So that's okay. So you had the dream since April and you didn't share it till like,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
wow. Okay. Yeah. So, no, and then just like, how, so that was another thing I noticed how in yours, see, yours was April 10th, and then mine's See, and in yours, you saw them coming. They were
Yeah.
coming,
Mhm.
and you were saying it's time. And
Mhm.
in mine, I had mine on June 9th on my birthday.
Yeah.
So that's how I felt. It was like a gift, right? Like
Mhm.
they wanted me to see this somehow, some way.
Mhm.
And even on my birthday, it was I'll have to make. See, that's another thing. I don't know if I want to share. It's like, but I had some interesting tests on my birthday that were it seemed very spiritual because of that. Because I had this very profound, dream, which
Sure.
now even means more because like you're telling me about your dream. So now it really
Yeah.
seems like a huge
Right.
dream and a message. And then I had these weird things happen to me on my birthday which were like, whoa, like what? Like this is insane. Which see, I don't know if I want to share it
Mhm.
but I probably will end up eventually, maybe like
Yeah.
2 months from now, I'll be like, all
Sure.
right,
Yeah. Maybe it's just
yeah,
not the right time.
yeah. Just to
Yeah.
show that we all get tested. We all like
Right.
it doesn't
Mhm.
matter how spiritual someone may feel or something.
Oh yeah.
I want to show that, even I get tested,
I think
so
too, it's important to recognize that, I mean, everybody gets tested, but you're only going to get tested as far as you can go. So it's, the soul or the universe or everything that's kind of coming together. It's only going to take you so far because it knows your limit. And it's going to push you to your limit.
yeah, no.
There's definitely those points, but after that, it's, you're much stronger and you realize how much you can handle. But again, it's just going to be in increments because it's not going to like overwhelm you or overload you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No. No, and that one felt like strange to say. I mean, not as big of a test at that moment, but I thought like had I been in a different space in my life, that would
Yeah.
have probably been something like huge, right? So,
Right.
but just to finish off that whole thing about, so yeah, I found it interesting that in yours on April 10th they were
Hmm.
coming, and then on mine 2 months later on June 9th they
Yeah.
were here because
They
that's
were
what I
here.
went and said.
Yeah.
I told my friend, I was
Yeah.
like, they're here, it's time. So
Yeah.
I still don't know exactly like what
Mhm.
I had a
Well,
friend that had more of a, I guess they didn't really say if they had a negative feeling, a good feeling. They dreamed something else,
mhm.
and I don't know what. Like I let everybody share. Like when I have guests on, I'll let them share whatever they feel.
Mhm.
So I don't know why in hers she had kind of a, I mean, it went into this whole other
Yeah.
thing about like, that whole CERN thing. Oh, go ahead, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I was just gonna say, I think too, if we're talking about other beings or other forms of consciousness, there is always like that shadow or the negative side. So, I mean, while we want to hope that if there's other assistants or other forms out there, that they would be helpful or positive, we also have to acknowledge that there's probably some that aren't.
Yes.
So, I think
Exactly.
so some people are probably going to experience that side. But I think figuring out what to do with it. So, I think it's huge that we have free will. And so if anything were to happen in someone's dream, just acknowledging that free will, to say, hey, I don't want to do this or I don't want to be a part of this.
Mm,
Or
yeah.
even having some like ritual of like protection before sleep, you
Mm,
know? Yeah.
yeah, most definitely. And since you mentioned that, like, so throughout your life, have you always been having experiences, or is this something newer, or?
I'll say, so I don't think I had mentioned this to you before, but I went through what's called like a spiritual awakening
Mm,
about a year ago. So in
oh,
June. So
oh,
I
wow,
I think that's what made me like pay more attention to like these kinds of things
mm,
because of that. But I'll say I've definitely had experiences throughout my life. I just didn't really give it a lot of meaning or really pay attention. But I think one of the biggest things that comes to mind is when I was younger, I was in a summer camp. I think I was probably maybe about 8 or 10 or something, and we were swimming, and I wasn't a good swimmer back then. I was really scared of swimming actually.
mm,
And I took classes and stuff, but I could never get it. I just had this huge fear about it. And so I was probably about 8, and we were at a pool, and I jumped into this water, and there were so many pools because it was like a water park or something.
oh, okay.
But I jumped into this water thinking it was like 4 feet or something. It was something whatever the number was. it was like the water was over the number, and so it just kind of distorted it.
Mm.
And so I was thinking it was something different. And when I got in and I realized I couldn't touch the bottom, I
Oh.
freaked out. And
Uh-oh.
so I was like actually drowning.
Mm.
And I remember this girl, it was a Caucasian girl. She came and pulled me out of the water.
Oh
But
wow.
when I got out of the water and I like coughed everything up and I like got myself together, she wasn't there.
Oh wow. Wow.
So again, I think that there's been many times where I've been assisted or something different could have happened. And yeah, but again, like at that point, I didn't pay attention to that. It wasn't until years later where I that memory resurfaced and I was like, that girl wasn't even there. Like, but who pulled me out of the water?
Mm.
You know? So yeah,
Yeah, no, no, that's a big deal.
yeah.
Um, you just reminded me of a time when I remember once when I was little, I was in elementary and we were we were walking to school, and I guess my older brother, he was probably like in sixth grade.
Hmm.
I don't know, first, second, I forgot what grade I was in, but he was walking to school, and I was walking with my other brother, and then I wanted to catch up to my older brother, and I just ran across the street, and you hear this car like, "Ah," and then it crash everything, boom. But
Wow.
I guess my friend's sister saw me, and she said it was like the craziest thing. Like I just flew. Like she said, she never saw anyone jump so far. Like,
Oh my God.
and like she's like, you jumped from like half the street to the sidewalk. And now, like when I think back, I'm like, did I? I don't know. What is something like help me? Because it was like,
Yeah.
how does a little kid jump so far? But
Right.
that
Right.
just popped in my head right now as you're sharing this story. And
Yeah.
yeah, because I remember after, she was like, man, you flew, you were like a frog. You just like flew
Wow.
and I thought these guys were like gonna beat me up or something because he just jumps out of the car and but he was like, are you okay? And I was like,
Mhm.
yeah, but I felt bad because, oh man, like I just ran across the street and the car like hit the brakes. It did a whole turn. It smashed into like two cars on the side.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah, it was all my fault because I wanted to catch it to my brother. So I was like,
Yeah.
but yeah, I feel like there are things throughout our life that
Yeah.
we just don't pay attention to.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And also I wanted to ask you about like being a therapist because funny enough, like earlier this year, like I met someone and it was just the craziest experience, right? I don't know
Mhm.
if you saw it. I shared about why I started the podcast and how I had met this this woman that we just had a bunch of similar experiences,
Mhm.
like like my brother passed away, her cousin passed away, and it was just
Yeah.
so similar. It was kind of a very strange
Right. Mhm.
situation that it had to be. It almost felt like someone wrote it, like it was like a divine
Yeah.
thing, right? But she told me how I guess she got her degree, I guess as a like for psychology or to be a
Mhm.
therapist, or I'm not sure. But she actually shared how they were while she was going to school for that, they actually taught about the spiritual aspect of things. And I was blown away. I was like, I
Oh,
would
wow.
have never, yeah. Oh, you didn't have
We
that same
didn't do
experience?
that.
Oh
I didn't
wow.
have that experience. No.
Yeah. So
But that's awesome.
yeah, no, because I was like, oh wow, things are really changing because
Mhm.
I think back on that, like how before, like I'm sure they did it on purpose, but even like to native medicine men, right? Like they would put them in like mental institutions and stuff. And that was their way of, I guess, making sure they didn't practice,
Mhm.
their spiritual ways, like saying, oh, well, they're crazy. They'll
Right.
put them in mental houses or
Yeah.
institutions if they tried to practice their spiritual ways. So when she told me that, I was like, oh wow, okay, so the world's really changing. Like, and she said how she was, I guess they taught them about how people have had near death experiences and they come back with these gifts and
Yeah.
yeah. So I was just blown away. But so okay, you didn't have the same experience then in school.
No, not in my
Oh
school. It was very like, these are the methods you use, and this is how you do it, and go do it.
wow.
Yeah.
And so that add to your hesitancy of wanting to share like your experiences also, like
I think so. I will say I spoke with somebody else recently. I think I mean, for many people, I know for myself included, there's this fear of, losing your mind, I guess. And so it's like, if I take that step this way, is that crossing the line? And so, I think I had mentioned to you about another dream I had where I was like hovering over myself, but I was a patient,
Mm.
and I was, but it was in my office and I was the patient. So I think there is something like deep rooted in me. I'm not sure if it came from my family, which, I said my mom was like, I wouldn't share that.
Mm.
It might have come from just that conditioning that there's just things you don't share because then you are labeled crazy, Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but the see, like the sad part, because yeah, it wasn't until I found the native community that it was like, oh wow, like I could talk
Mhm.
about this now. Like
Yeah.
it was a, once that happened, then I think that helped me evolve into, and it seemed like the more I shared, the more I started having experiences. And the reason I feel that, like if I wanna, I had to try to make sense of that. And I feel it's almost like a job, right? Like you're a manager, you have two workers. You have the worker that, I mean, doesn't do anything. You have the other one, you tell them something and they do it, no questions asked. They're
Mhm.
like, okay, hey, I need you to do
Yeah.
this. And they do it.
Yeah.
And so that's how I feel like when I get messages, because they know I'm gonna say, even if I'm reluctant, they know
Yeah.
eventually I'm gonna spit it out.
Yeah.
So that's how I felt
I think
sometimes,
I
you
think
know.
that's huge. I think, there's a saying that the universe rewards bravery. And
Mm.
so I think too, I've also been, looking at stuff where there's this idea that stuff is always out there, the messages, the ideas, stuff like that, inspiration, it's all out there. They say like it's in the air,
Mm.
but it's only going to, only certain people are actually going to do something with it. And
Mm.
so once it catches that person, then it'll start to really kind of keep feeding that, I think, like, for example, I heard something where with Michael Jackson, that
Oh.
like he would be in the sleeping or something, and then he would wake up and call somebody and say butterflies, butterflies. And it was that, he was giving like the music or the song or something.
Oh.
And whoever it was he called, his producer, whoever he was working with, whatever, they were like, let's do this tomorrow. And he was like, no, 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 because if we don't do it now, Prince will get it. So
Oh
it's this
wow.
thing that like we are constantly given stuff, but like if you don't use it, you don't do it, it'll go to the next person, you
Wow.
know? And that's why when things are invented, it's like, I thought of that.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like, well, you didn't do anything with it.
Mm.
So this guy did it.
Yeah. No, no, that
So,
gave me chills right now when you were, it reminded me, it's funny how like a little word could trigger an old memory. It's amazing right now. Like I remember when I started making music, um, I was in a group, and I remember me and my friend came up with this song and we never released it. And then Snoop came out. It was like almost the same song. I was like, what? That's our stuff.
yeah,
But we know Snoop didn't know us. Like, there's no way in
right.
hell Snoop knew who we were.
Yeah, yeah,
So we were like, well, he didn't steal it from us. But I
yeah.
think I
That's what it is. It's
yeah,
in the air,
yeah,
and he got it.
he got it. Yeah, yeah. And he did something with it, you know?
But then you tell people that, and they're like, "Oh no, you didn't come up
Yeah.
with that. He's the genius. Like,
Yeah.
he's there getting the credit for it."
Yeah. But just you telling me that story lets me know Michael Jackson was very aware then
Exactly. So that's what
of
I'm
the
saying is like
spiritual.
if
Yeah.
people could tap into that. And so I'll share something. I've recently actually started receiving music in my sleep, and I have no talent. I don't sing. I don't know anything about music. Like I said, I'm a therapist. I just just sit and listen. So and again, maybe that's part of it is like, well, you're listening, so here it is.
Yeah.
So I've gotten it, and but the thing would be is when I wake up, it just goes away. I'm like, I can't remember it.
Um,
And I had posted on somebody's YouTube channel, I think they had said something about receiving messages in your dream.
mhm.
And I asked her, because she's really good at recording her dreams, I said, what suggestions do you have if you're receiving music, but it goes away when you wake up? And all these people started responding to me in it, and they were saying that you could have a voice recorder next to you, or definitely have a journal right there, so when you wake up, you just write it down right away. things like that. Or even just, I liked the idea of the recorder, because sometimes I would, with the words, there would be a certain like beat to it, or like a way to say it. And so you would want to catch that. So
Mm.
I did catch it one time. And other times I've just written it down. But there, the person who made that video, she said, I think it was like, there were people, well-known musicians, who would receive music in their sleep.
Mm.
And so she was like, so yeah, I mean, definitely pay attention to it. But for me personally, I'm just kind of like, well, if I'm receiving it and I don't really have that talent or even that passion for that, should I just be sharing it? Like, should I be giving it to people? Because I'm sure there's people who would buy somebody's song and then they just kind of play around with it, or like put different music to it.
Yeah, no, no, I mean, there's so many things to say about music, but for example, like just to, like how you said you have like really no musical,
Hmm.
but at the same time, see, we all we are is music. Like we're literally, and a science, I'm sure someone that studies this scientifically can explain it way better than me, but we're literally like walking music. Like our
Yeah,
body is vibrating
the
at,
cells are vibrating.
yeah,
Yeah,
and they're making music. It's like
yeah, it's true.
there's certain animals that, oh, like, well, hummingbirds, right? Because I heard a hummingbird right now. So
Oh, yeah.
hummingbirds, when they do their little thing, they're actually singing like a whole song. We just can't hear it. We don't,
Wow.
yeah,
It's at
we
a
don't.
different frequency.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And that they catch,
Wow.
that's how they're communicating. So they're not just doing the little, the thing that they do. I was gonna try to imitate them, but yeah. So,
Yeah.
they don't just do the little thing they do. They're actually singing a whole song, and
That's
for
awesome.
different things, for probably marking their territory, for mating,
Yeah.
for everything. So they're singing little songs. So,
Amazing.
yeah, everything has I'm sure they've even studied that even the plants are giving off like sounds, right there.
Right.
Yeah,
Mhm.
so it's like sounds like music. So really, yeah, so I'm sure if it's being given to you, it comes, it's for,
Yeah.
yeah, I could keep hearing the little hummingbird singing. See,
Yeah.
it's like agreeing with me.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, so and what else was I gonna say about that? You said something else that
I don't.
about that, and oh no, I guess just that, like when I've made music, that's how I felt. Like it always felt like an accident, like, or half the songs, right?
Sure.
Probably all of them, really. Like, they would come to me and I didn't know where they came from. Or sometimes I'll just be playing. I'll be playing, but
Mhm.
it'll be like an accident. Like I'll play something that seemed like an accident, and next thing you know, this whole song comes out.
Yeah.
So I started feeling that like it was something
Yeah.
channeled, right? Like channeled.
Yeah. Mhm. I think too, another thing that would be interesting is, sometimes I think we're given something, but then it's up to us to kind of figure out what else to do with it. And so if I were to maybe take the time to like just sit there and try to create more from what I was given,
Yeah.
maybe that would be different too. But I haven't taken that time. Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm sure it'll make sense. Recording it.
Hmm.
One of the craziest things that happened, and it's probably over a year ago, but I remember I dreamed, and it was crazy because it was like that, like some beings that came from the sky,
Yeah.
and then they handed me this thing, right? It was like there was a ship, but then this little ship came to make contact with me, and I was in the street, and there were all these people, and on this little thing, it started playing a song, and no one else could hear it. I was like,
Hmm.
"You guys don't hear it? Can you guys hear it?" No, no, nobody could hear it but me.
Wow.
But it was a song that exists from like the 80s or the 90s. I think it was the 80s. And it
Yeah.
was oh, Land of Confusion by this group Genesis. Have you ever heard it?
I'm gonna write it down though.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah. But the words were like, and it's all about that. Like we're living in the land of all these people. Like there's all these things going on, but in one of the verses, the guy's like, "Oh, we're gonna be the generation that changes it. We're gonna be this," and it's
Oh
such
wow.
an, yeah. I felt like, wow, like out of all things,
Wow.
like, yeah, it was amazing. I was blown away, and I posted it on the page, but I was like, see those kind of things. Sometimes but it doesn't matter if people react to it or not. I guess you just have to give the message. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And
But
I was thinking about that too, is, when I was talking to you about my spiritual awakening, is that everybody goes through their own type of I guess, recognition of spirituality or something, all in a different time.
Mm.
And so I feel like us posting those things is good, even if nobody is responding to it now. You never know, in about 6 months, everybody's just getting lit up with this, that they're like, what do I do? Like, am I going crazy? And then they see our stuff and they're like, oh, wow, I feel normal now.
Yeah.
And so I was thinking about that just yesterday. I was like, even if people don't get it right now, it's not to say that in a year that they're not like, wow, I'm so glad that you did that, because I would have checked myself in somewhere.
No, exactly. And yeah, see, I wanted to ask you about that as well. Well, I don't know. You don't have to answer if you could, because I wouldn't want it to like affect your work in any kind of way. But
No, that's okay.
like, okay, well,
Yeah.
for example, like now having had all these experiences,
Mhm.
how I mean, would it be difficult, like if you have a patient that's telling you these experiences, or I mean, as a therapist, is it more like do you feel your job is just to really listen, or yeah,
Yeah,
I don't
so
want to ask.
it's funny. It's so funny you mentioned that, because just yesterday I was sitting. I'm actually in my office now, but yesterday I was sitting here and I was thinking about how I have changed in my job. So I've been at my job for maybe about at least a year now,
Mm,
at this position.
mm,
And I was thinking about it. And when I first started, I was just having the same exact thought you brought up. I was thinking how at first I was just kind of listening, because that's just what we're trained to do, is listen. And I was told by somebody, you don't give advice,
mm,
which I thought was the hardest thing for me. I was like, why can't I make suggestions? But it's like you have to get them to a point where they figure it out for themselves.
okay.
And so, like, I get that, but at the same time, I think sometimes people do need that like, give me the strategies, let me know the tips, so that I can then get to a better place. Um so at first I was going off of that, of just listening, and I was like, yeah, okay. But then I did transition more into giving advice and sharing things that work, and being more like motivational, so that they would actually start doing it.
Mm,
And now I feel I'm more in a position, and maybe this is just kind of like we're talking about being guided. I feel like there has to be a reason. So I had transitioned in my job. So I work for a company, but I was originally at a different location, and then that one shut down. So I got moved over here.
mm,
And so I see so many patients throughout the week. And so I was thinking about it, and I was like, there has to be a reason that I'm now reaching so many more people.
mm,
And also coincidentally, now my views of things have changed, and I'm having these experiences, like you said. So I think it's all kind of falling into place, that like maybe I am supposed to not share those specific things, but take what I'm getting from them and kind of translate them differently for people, to kind of instill more hope and like empower them,
mm,
you know. So I do a lot of like I tend to back away from like their diagnosis a lot, and I kind of talk to them as, like, if you didn't have that, how would you be living? And they give me all these answers, and I'm like, man, it sounds like you can do that now. But they're so limited because, well, I have ADHD or I have schizophrenia. And not to say that those things don't have symptoms and can definitely affect how you're living, but a lot of the stuff that comes up, they could definitely be doing now,
mm.
you know. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. I felt like, yeah, I don't want to put like, I guess because you're taught so much not to think like that, right?
Hmm.
Like, so I just don't want, like, I don't want you to share
Yeah.
anything you're not comfortable
Yeah.
with sharing. I was gonna say something about that, but yeah, no. My mind drew a blank because okay. let, let me gather my thoughts real quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, my mind just completely drew a blank because I was so immersed in what you were saying about that.
Hmm.
Um, no, and I feel like it's very like brave of you to even share that. No, and it reminded me, like, there was actually, I went once to a counselor or a therapist, right?
Hmm.
Um, and they said something they weren't supposed to say, I think, and but it helped me. It changed.
Yeah.
It really changed. Like, well, I'll just share it because it's been so long now that I'm sure but you know, they had been therapists or for like, I don't know, 20, 30 years. I forgot how long they told me,
Right.
but
Hmm.
you know, I was in a relationship, and so they suggested couples counseling. So I was like, okay, fine. You know, through my job, like whatever, I get all that stuff. So I was like, okay, fine. Um, so I made the appointment, but they were like, oh, since you guys aren't married, you got to come in first, and then we could say she's part of the treatment, so we could bring her in after. So I went and I told them, and I was being really nice about the things I was experiencing with her, and just telling him a little bit. He's like, hey, you know what? I've been doing this for like, you know, whatever, 20 or 30 years, I forgot. And he's all, but honestly, if I were you, I'd run.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So he wasn't supposed to say that, right? I always wondered, you know, but but it was like it got confirmed right after. Like I had my phone off and I was blown away, right? And then I go to my car and I turn my phone on, and like right when I turn it on, she calls. And I
Hmm.
answer her, and she's like, and I was like, oh, and she's like, well, where were you, or what were you doing? I was like, I was at the therapy session. I told you. She's like,
Yeah.
yeah, right, whatever. I was like, hello, I came for you. What do you mean? Like,
Yeah.
you know, this is what. And she's like, yeah, right. I hope she was worth it, and this and that. I'm like, oh my
Oh my
god, like,
God.
yeah. So it confirmed everything
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
was saying. Like, it was
Run.
like toxic, like times a
Yeah.
hundred. Like, you know, that even like, okay, I told you, you wanted me to go. I did it for you. Da da da.
Yeah.
And then, you know, I go and then you're calling me, oh, I hope she was worth it. I hope that. And I was like,
Yeah.
wow. But he saw it in me. I was like, wow, this guy like knew his stuff. Cause
Hmm.
he, with me playing it down and being all
Hmm.
nice and not even saying half, not even like a fourth of the things I had experienced, he like, honestly, if I were you, I'd run.
Yeah.
And he explained, because then if you stay in those things, like eventually it could lead to domestic violence or something, whether, you know, whether on purpose or
It's
not. It
harder
just,
to leave.
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, exactly. And then it's so it just he was telling me like yeah, eventually those things always escalate and this and that. So yeah,
Hmm.
that's why I know how hard it is for you know, and I never really shared that. I don't think I've ever shared that because of that. I was always like, oh, I wouldn't want someone to find out
Yeah.
who he was and that he gave me this advice, and you know, I
Yeah.
just thought it was really brave of.
Yeah. I think too, I think that's really key though, is I've recognized that too. So like we're all human. So like I think that's kind of an issue I've had with the whole ethics around like these types of jobs is like it's almost like, well, you can't be human, so you just leave it at this, and that's what it is. But we're human, we're here to connect, we're here to like really be real with each other, and therapy should be a place for that. And so, him saying that, I feel like that should be, the norm.
No,
Yeah.
most definitely. That's no, and it's funny, like even like what you're saying right now. You know, I think the spiritual stuff is very, it's that important because I was, for some reason yesterday I was, because it was a full moon, right? So
Yeah.
I don't know if you, if see, like I experience that on new moons and full moons, I feel certain energies, right?
Mhm.
And I feel them strongly, and I guess it depends on, I guess, astrologically. I understand that, and I've understood that since I was maybe 18 years old. I started
Wow.
noticing a pattern. I was like, oh, I'm really. Sometimes it'd be agitated. Sometimes it'd be like different things that I would feel.
Yeah.
And then I'd go outside and I'd look and there was like a full moon. I'll be like, oh, wow. And I started noticing this like before even knowing. So it wasn't me just saying, oh, it's a full moon, I feel weird. It was like
Sure.
I started noticing. And so I would always feel, even when people, and they say, like, I guess statistically crimes go up on a full moon, all kinds of crazy
Hmm.
things that they can
Right.
translate into,
Hmm.
you know, the physical. Like they could show proof that it happens. So
Right.
so even knowing that, like, oh, okay, the reason I was bringing that up was because I was going to talk about the story. Like, so it was like a solar eclipse that day, and for some reason I knew it didn't make sense. I was really agitated, really. I didn't understand
Yeah.
why. You know, I had been very happy during that time, and the
Hmm.
solar eclipse comes. Oh, and it was in, I don't know if you know about astrology, so I could.
A
Oh,
little
you
bit.
do?
Yeah.
Okay, do you know about like your different birth chart and all this and that, or?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Okay, so my moon sign is in Sagittarius, right? And there was a solar eclipse in the sign of Sagittarius, right?
Hmm.
So, you know, the eclipse still deals with the moon. So
Yeah.
for some reason, yeah, it affected me. I was feeling all agitated. It didn't make sense, but I was like, okay, it's the eclipse. So I went to go for a hike, and on my drive there, I got pulled over by a
Mhm.
police officer, right?
Yeah.
And I knew there was no reason. So he comes up, and I was already agitated because I was like, okay, I'm trying just to make it to the hills. I was literally like, how they say, head for the hills. I was heading for
Yeah.
the hills because I was like, okay, I'm all feeling all this stuff. I just want to go be in nature, be at peace.
Yeah.
That's my safe
Mhm.
place. I'll be better. Like after walk, 2 hour, 3 hour walk, I'll be good. Um, so I'm going, and he pulls me over, and then after that, um, he's like whatever, and then like I'm like, well, he's all, why I pulled you over, and I was like, no. I was like, why? And then he shows me like the dumbest picture. It was like a guy with a hat, a blurry
Mm.
picture of a guy with a hat in a car. Oh, we're looking for this guy. So, because I was wearing a hat and I'm in a car, it doesn't even show the
That's so
type of
funny.
car it was. Yeah, it doesn't even show the type of car it was.
Yeah.
No, just a guy with a hat.
You're the guy with the hat.
Yeah, I was the guy with the hat. And
Yeah.
he had been chasing me. Yeah, because right when I was leaving my house, I was at a red light. He was across on the other side, and he made
Mhm.
a turn, and I kept going straight. So it took him almost 3 miles or something to catch up to me. So that means he had to go turn around, and he started
Mm.
chasing me for like probably 3 miles till he caught up over there where I was already like almost halfway to the hills where I go hiking. So I just start kind of exploding, and he's like, oh, well, give me your, I was like, what, are you kidding me? Like I was just like, I was really agitated, even more so than what I already
Mhm.
was. So I just kind of
Yeah.
exploded. And then he's even like, I guess, oh, keep your hands on the steering wheel. Then he starts getting nervous or whatever because I was so agitated. But then he asked me for my stuff, and I opened the glove compartment, and like I guess these bundles of sage come out. And then
Girl.
he goes, "Is that sage?" And I was like, "Yeah." And then he just de-escalates like that.
Oh, wow.
And so did I, because I saw he recognized that,
Okay, yeah.
and so did I. And it
Mhm.
brought me down, and it brought him down. So I can't even take credit for it. It was like a spiritual, it's a spiritual plant. It's for
Yeah.
natives, it's one of the four sacred plant medicines, right? And so I was bringing all that to say like how, even though he might have been taught a certain way,
Yeah.
he was human in that moment.
Yeah.
In that
Mhm.
moment, he knew something. I don't know if he had been at ceremonies himself, or who he knows that, or they just use sage or something. He knew that.
Yeah.
And so I always thought like, okay, that had nothing to do with me. That was a spiritual thing. And after
Mhm.
that, like it was over. And then I haven't been pulled over since then. And I hadn't been pulled over since like I
Wow.
don't know, years before, at least 3 years before that or longer. But I think they just wanted me to see that. Maybe so I could share right now because I hadn't shared that. So
Yeah.
just sharing it right now, even how that right in that moment, even though he's
Right.
trained to act a certain way, he was human in that moment, and it was a spiritual thing, and so
Yeah.
I
I think
guess.
sometimes too, like the some things that are used in like spiritual practices and stuff that they help people connect, I guess. And so, if that's something that he's used or practiced and then he saw you had it, it just like I said, it just made him feel like, okay, I'll just back up.
Yeah.
And I actually have a book in my office. It just says chakras on it.
Oh.
And I have it sitting in here. And so some people who come in who are like really scared about coming to therapy, some of them really calm down when they see it. They come in and they're like, "Oh, okay, you're like me." They'll sit down and like, they I guess they assume a therapist is going to be like really uptight and like, ask them all these questions, or make them cry. So
Ah.
when they see that, a lot of them will just like, it's like all this tension just leaves their body. They're like, "Oh, okay." So
Oh.
yeah. And I don't even know that much about chakras, but it's a book that I just happen to have in here. And so it's funny to see people just kind of like not worry when they see that.
Yeah, yeah. And I don't know that much about them either, but I think I mentioned to you how I would be feeling. I started and those kind of things almost feels like something's telling me,
Right.
like I'll have, sometimes I would have a certain pain that just
Hmm.
didn't make sense. And then it would be like, it would be, like, okay, I would look up, pain associated. Like if I have a pain, what chakra is this? Like literally I'll put like,
Yeah.
okay, I have a knee pain, what chakra is this? And they'll say, oh, that means you're holding on to this, or you haven't figured this out.
Hmm.
And I'll do that, and then it's gone.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow, that doesn't
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. But
Well, I guess like going back to when you were saying, the music in our bodies, the
mm,
vibrating cells. And so like that's all that is like there's these different points in the body. And so to figure that out so that things can flow better.
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah, and I wanted to ask you also about the more recent dream that you had. You don't have to share it if you don't want to,
No, that's
but
okay.
if you do it, you can share it,
Yeah.
and you
Which
know,
one are you referring to? I don't remember.
the one about something with the food and there was a crash
Oh,
and
yes. Okay. Yeah, I call it like my conspiracy dreams.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
It was like that. Oh my gosh.
But it was a
So
dream,
that,
so it's fine. Like,
yeah, that was wild because usually I feel like in my dream state, I'm usually pretty calm unless something, I'm pretty aware of like how I'm feeling in my dream state. And so I'm usually pretty calm unless there's some type of external thing. Like I one time had a dream about like a large cat chasing me,
oh
so
wow.
something like that, So unless something like that is happening, I'm usually very calm. I'm usually, I think, very similar to how I am in my waking life. I'm just very like chill and like,
Mm,
okay, well, that's just what that is. But this one, how I was very different. And so this, like, I think it really, it took me for a loop when I woke up. I was like, what was that? And so in my dream, um, it was where was I? Oh, so I think to start off, um, my parents came to visit. So I live in Alabama. My parents are in DC. So
oh,
they came to visit, and they came sooner than I had expected in my dream. And so this is weird too. You ever have where things in your dream you are thinking kind of as if you were in this reality, like the waking state. So I already am planning to see them in August, but
oh,
I'm going to be traveling to DC.
mm,
So when they showed up in my dream, I'm like, what are you doing here? Because I'm not supposed to see you until August.
mm,
And so they came and they said that they were worried about me, that, my husband had mentioned he was worried about my mental health, stuff like that. And so I was like, okay. And so I had talked about how I was experiencing depressive symptoms, and I was worried because there was this dog. So a little backstory: there was a dog that used to come by our house, and she would attack my dog. So
oh,
I ended up calling. We kept her around for a while. She was very sweet on her own, but she would attack my dog all the time. And it
mm,
got to a point where, I think 3 times she had him bleeding, and that was enough for me. I was like, that's the last. I can't have her around anymore. So I called a place that could take her to a shelter. And part of me always wondered, like, did she really make it to a shelter? What did they really do with her?
mm.
And so in my dream, I was depressed about it. And I was like, I think like I messed up her life path or something. I felt really bad. And so I was depressed about it. Well, then my parents were gone. They went somewhere like shopping or something. And I'm laying in a bed with my 2 girls and my ex-husband. We're all just laying. It's either a bed or a couch, and we're laying there. And all of a sudden, this craft came right by the window. So we have like the bed, and then there's a large window next to it. So this craft came down, and you could see it like, when you look at like a camera and it like one of those old fashioned cameras, when you go to zoom, it like you can see the thing sticking out.
Yeah.
It was doing something like that. It was zooming in on us, and it was doing stuff. And I grabbed my girls and we just went on the floor. I took them down on the floor, and I'm holding them, and I told them, don't look at it. Don't look
Mm,
at it. And they're laughing, they're giggling because they think this is a big game or joke. And I was like, just don't look at it. And I think right before this happened, I was trying to tell my ex that, I feel like something's coming. And, I was trying to tell him, but it made him more worried. He was like, you should see a therapist, you should get some help or whatever. And I was like, okay. So this thing comes, and I grab him, and I'm trying to tell him this is what I was talking about, but he couldn't hear me because the craft was making such a loud noise. It was kind of like a helicopter sound or something. It was like right there. You couldn't really hear anything. And so I just told him, I said, don't say anything because they're listening.
mm,
And he was just, I don't know if he heard it or not. So anyway, just like as I said that, as I said they're listening, it went away. It was gone in like a second. And then we got up, and on the sky, like I'm looking out the window, and on the sky there was like some type of projection or thing. It was like a skit, some type of, I don't know what it was, but everybody was laughing about it. So
Mm.
people came outside of their homes. So in this dream, my house was different again. It was a large house, and we were living very close to other people. So there were all these houses together. So all these people came out of their houses, they're laughing about what was in the sky.
Mm.
And I was confused because I was like, does nobody want to talk about the other thing? You know,
Yeah.
like what was that? And nobody cared about it. They were just laughing at this other thing. So then the next thing I remember is this woman showed up at our door with two boys, and she was selling cookies. And when I saw her, like there was something in me saying like that something's off here. Like
Mm.
either she's not really their mom, or there's some other, they're not really selling for, you know, a church or something. Like something was weird. And so I didn't want to buy any, but my kid's dad bought it for them, obviously, because they wanted cookies. So they're eating them. There were other people in the house with me, so like parts of his family, and then some old friends from like my past, like high school days. Like it was people I haven't seen today, you know. And so there we're all sitting around eating these cookies, and again I had this feeling like something's off, something's wrong. And so I dropped the cookie, and I tell everybody, I was like, it's in the food, like stop eating the food.
Mm.
And they're just not, they're like not listening to me. But two people who I knew from high school, they stopped.
Mm.
And I asked them, I said, you believe me? And they were like, yeah. And so this was huge for me because, like, I guess in my dream, I felt a little crazy or like not with reality. So I was really shocked at, like, oh, wow, people believe me. So that happened. And then all of a sudden, you know, other people in the neighborhood had gotten these cookies as well. And then I hear like a shooting next door.
Oh.
It was literally right over the fence. And I was asking somebody what happened. And somebody said that there was something on the news that said, like, shoot the Latinos or something.
Oh
And
wow.
so so somebody went and shot like our neighbors.
Mm.
And I was like, why out of nowhere? These people had no problems with each other before. And now all of a sudden you see something like that, like it didn't make sense. So again, I went back to the food. I was like, all these people ate these cookies, and now they're seeing these messages, and now you're acting on the message, you know? So it was a lot. And then what happened? Oh, and then I think I told you I had this feeling. I was like, what if my kid's dad like betrays me in some way,
Mm.
you know, because I am, you know, Latin as well. Or, you know, what if some message comes across of like, you know, kick the moms out of the house or something, you know? I
Mm.
don't know. So it was just this weird feeling of like, I'm going to be betrayed. And so I started having that conversation with him. And I was like, you know, do you think you would trust me if I had to make a decision? Or do you think, you know, you would go against me in some way? And he was like, well, we're not married anymore, so, you know, I'm just doing everything for the girls. And I was like, okay. But that didn't sit well with me because I was like, again, you could be getting a message to do something to me, you know? So anyway, it's just a lot of weird stuff in the dream where it was like very like governmental. I remember being on a tablet and like swiping through, and it was nothing but bad, negative stuff.
Mm.
It was pretty much like the news, but you couldn't get to any good content, any positive content.
Wow.
Everything was negative. And all of a sudden, this man appeared on the tablet. It was like he hacked into the system, and he looked like, do you know who Russell Brand is?
Yeah, yeah. I love
Yeah, he
Russell
looked
Brand.
like him. He looked like him, like the long hair. He's like a white man with like longer hair. And he got through, and I'm looking at this tablet, and it's like glitching out, like it's going in and out. But he's like, look, I know what's going on right now. If anybody else knows what's happening, like please reach out to me, you know. And so
Mm.
part of me was like, oh, I need to reach out to him because like I know what's happening. I can see this stuff and nobody else is getting it. And then I also felt again with like the very paranoid thinking in my dream state. I was like, well, what if this is a trap? What if I reach out to him and it's really like the government trying to see who's like awake, you know, and aware, And then when I reach out, like I'm gone, you know?
Mm.
So I didn't reach out, but yeah, so that it was just themes like that in my dream. And it was very odd. And then I think I had told you how sometimes things in my dream, they kind of play out, or like themes kind of come up some way. So this past week, I think I don't remember when I had that dream, maybe almost 2 weeks ago now. But just after that, there was a dead dog near my house. Like
Mm.
I'm going down this road and there was a dog. I don't know if it got hit or what happened, but in my dream, when I was worried about that other dog I told you about, I had this like vision of her with like a bloody face.
Oh wow.
And so this dog, when I passed by, it reminded me of it. I was like, oh my God. And so again, it's like sometimes I feel like it's almost very prophetic. Like, there's like little things, it's not the same thing. So it's not the same dog, but to see a dog like that, and then what's very weird, and this is kind of graphic, is that dog, it was laying there. And a lot of times people will move dogs like that or move an animal, but this dog had stayed there. It's still there now.
Wow.
But now all that's left is like the bones.
Mm.
Like birds have eaten off of it. I've passed by seeing it, and it's just very like eerie. But it was just weird that in my dream, there was this dog and I was worried about her. And then I see this other dog here. And now, I had talked to you about in my dream, I was worried that people weren't going to believe me or something like this. So recently I got sick, and I'm still like recovering, but just like a virus or something. But I was talking to my ex about it, and I told him how it did have me like feeling depressed and stuff. And he said, you should see a therapist.
Wow.
And it was just like in the dream. And so it was funny. And that happened actually yesterday. He said that.
Wow.
So very weird. And then like the food stuff. So this virus I have right now, I don't know what it is. I cannot hold food down right now, but it's not a stomach flu or anything. So I've been tested for stuff and I don't know what it is, but right now I just have like a very like intolerance for like food. I don't know
Mm.
what's going on. So again, it's in the food. I don't know.
Wow.
It's very odd.
Well,
Yeah.
now I'm inclined to ask, like, what have you been eating lately?
Yeah,
So I don't need
exactly.
it.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was trying to think too. I was like, what have I been eating? But I haven't even really been eating that bad, so I'm trying to think of anything major. Like it's just been random stuff like spaghetti. Like I don't know, like just random. Yeah. So I don't know. Very odd.
Yeah, no, and thank you for sharing that because well, there's a few things I want to say. Like one thing, see, I noticed how descriptive you are of the dreams, and
Mhm.
I've done that where I've told people and they're like, man, how do you, or I guess that not everybody sees dreams in color as well.
Right. Yeah.
And I do. So when someone has told me that, I was like, really? Like that's so strange to me. And
Mhm.
so even that, but just how descriptive you are,
Mhm.
obviously, like it feels like that's why you would get messages, right? Because you're able to remember all these little details.
Yeah.
And it may
Mhm.
seem like they don't matter, but everything you were saying, I was like listening to. And
Mhm.
and I think everything matters in some way or another.
Yeah.
And I was gonna ask you about the precognitive dreams. And
Mhm.
so does, because you've had those experiences, is that kind of what helps you? Because that's what I've always felt. Like when they give me, I think I shared that with you about how I have big dreams,
Mhm.
like even the whole pandemic thing, right? Like I
Right.
dreamed it like, I would say like at least over 10 years now. It's probably been like 12 years. But the reason I remembered it was because I dreamed something. It was so like something that happened in the dream and it came true like right away. And it made me remember all the rest. I was like, oh wow. So all that other stuff is important for some reason.
Yeah.
And it was with someone else. It was like I dreamed of this. It was weird. It was like, because I remember when it happened during the pandemic, the streets were empty, right? There was no one there. The streets were empty. And when the pandemic happened, I remember driving and everything was dead. Nobody. I was at the day that I drove, I was the only one out there and it looked like a ghost town, the whole city.
Mhm.
And I guess people weren't supposed to be going out. I was like, screw this. And I went for a hike because no one was there anyways. I was like,
Right.
you know, so
Yeah.
there's me breaking like, the road. They were
Yeah.
like, stay home. I was like, I'm going for a hike. There's no one
Yeah.
there anyways. I'm gonna go be
Right.
in nature. And I remember
Mhm.
just driving and everything being empty. And I was like, oh wow, this is what I dreamed. Like this is now
Mm.
it's and I started seeing a bunch of other things happening. But what
Yeah.
made me remember that was I had, I was taking this after like at some adult school, they were giving Chinese classes, right? So
Mhm.
I was learning Chinese, and this lady was sitting next to me. She was like this older Jewish woman was sitting next to me,
Yeah.
and I had a dream. In the dream, it was like her, and I was asking her. I went to her house, and in the dream, I'm asking her like, "Hey, where's your daughter? Where's your daughter?" And she's telling me, "Oh, she's I guess upstairs or something." And then so she had left somewhere. She had left to Germany or something for like 2 weeks. So when she got back, I asked her, like in real life now, I was like, I was gonna tell her about the dream. And then I asked her when she got back, I was like, hey, I had a dream about you like 2 weeks ago. And back then I didn't really share my dreams, but here I was, like something compelled me to share it with this,
Mhm.
woman that would sit next to me in this Chinese class. And like, yeah, I went to your house and I was asking for your daughter. And she was like, when was this? And I was like, about 2 weeks ago. And then she's like, which daughter? And I was like, I don't know. Like, I guess she had two daughters. And she was like, which daughter? I was like, I don't know. I was just like asking for your daughter. And she's like, oh, well, like 2 weeks ago, my daughter got in a huge car accident. I was
Oh,
like,
wow.
yeah, yeah. So I was like, oh, wow. I was like, but she's okay. She's recovering. But yeah, I think they had gone to the mountains. They were driving down and she got into a big wreck or something.
Wow.
Yeah, so then I was like, oh wow, that was real. So then all that other stuff, even though it seemed creepy, the empty streets, and there was a doomsday clock like up. I remember looking up.
Whoa.
Yeah,
Yeah.
have you heard about like the
Mhm.
doomsday clock and all that?
Yeah.
So all that stuff. So I always remembered it. I even worked it into a song I wrote. I put it like the best way I could in a 4-minute song. And then when it happened 12 years later, so I'm saying all that to say, so is like, do you feel that like because you've had all these little like precognitive dreams here and there,
Mm.
is that what makes you pay more attention or?
I think I almost want to say it's the other way around. I
Oh,
think
okay.
now that I'm paying more attention, maybe something is working, I guess, with me or something,
Mm,
Does that
yeah,
make
yeah.
sense?
No,
But I
that
mean,
makes
I guess it could go either way. But I think now that I'm paying more attention, because before I wasn't, and it's not to say that this stuff wasn't happening before, but I was never writing down my dreams or really paying attention. So I think now that I am paying attention is why things are kind of, I guess, appearing like they're working with me.
mm,
Yeah.
yeah, no, and I didn't tell, like, another reason why I started this whole channel was, in my sneaky way, it was kind of for that, like I wanted people to share their experiences so people get familiar with it and know it's real.
Mhm.
Like,
Mhm.
because at first that was my thing, right? Like, everyone I wanted to bring on was people that I've interacted with that I could vouch for. Like,
Mhm.
or we've shared like strange experiences where, like, like this happens a lot now. It didn't happen before, but now it happened a lot with my nephew. Like,
Mhm.
he'll call me. Sometimes he'll call me every day. Sometimes he's just, like while he's working, he'll give me a call. And almost it's like last time, right? I was for some reason I brought up like the Notorious B.I.G. and I was telling them like, oh, I wasn't the biggest fan, because I was in
Mhm.
California, so I was more like the Tupac fan, and
Yeah.
but the Notorious B.I.G. I mentioned a song, old song from the '90s, and I was explaining the way he rapped, and my nephew, as I'm telling him, like not even probably 10, 20 seconds, he walks into a store and they're playing that song out of all songs.
Yeah.
So
Uh-huh.
it happens a lot. Or last time, like I went for a hike and I found a crow feather. I picked it up.
Mhm.
I had this walking stick. I put it on my walking stick, and then my nephew sends me a picture. Oh, I went outside the gym and there's like 20 crows, and I'm like, wow. So it happens a lot with him. So sometimes I have these experiences with certain people, or sometimes it's even on a deeper level. So I wanted to have like all my first guests be people that we've shared things with that I could vouch for. Like, hey, this is real. Like the things that they're sharing, they're not crazy. They're not this. Like this
Mhm.
is, so
Yeah.
so when messages now in the present time
Mhm.
come in, like we could share, just like the dream about, the condor and its time. And
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's gonna mean something now, or like you said, it might mean something 6 months from now.
Mm-hmm.
But that
Well,
was kind of, oh, go ahead, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I mean, even when you look at the dreams that we both had that were similar, when I was like, when I they were coming, and then that was in April, and then in June you said they're here.
Yeah,
So, there's got to be more people having very similar dreams, but maybe they're not paying attention,
yeah,
or they're not really giving it a lot of credit.
yeah,
Yeah.
no, definitely. And so that's why I wanted to have this space for when messages do come in.
Hmm.
And I even always think of it like that. Like, people could feel however they want. Some people like the Bible, some people don't.
Hmm.
Especially even now in modern times, is like there's even more people that just dismiss it. And
Hmm.
but to me, it helped me when I didn't have no one to talk to. I would
Yeah.
read, and a lot of the experiences, I was like, oh wow, this happened to me, this happened to me. As crazy as it was seeming to people, maybe like, oh, this is just fanciful stories or whatever. A lot
Mhm.
of things I was experiencing. And that's what it is. There's a lot of prophecies that some people say are coming now,
Mhm.
2,000 years later. So
Right.
I don't know if some of these things we share, maybe they're not going to be, we won't even be around to see, you know
Right.
them
Yeah.
come to fruition. But maybe someone, I don't know, maybe they'll get passed on, and someone's kid,
Yeah.
like, I don't know how the
Yeah.
whole thing works. but
Yeah. Right.
but
Crazy.
yeah, just like I'm sure someone, whoever thought of cell phones and this and that, at some point, I think in old movies they would even always show things that now you see like 30 years, 40 years later or something like that. So
Yeah.
so
Right.
something like that. So yeah, that was my whole, like, one of my sneaky, I had never said it, but my sneaky way of like starting this whole thing, so that
Yeah.
when messages do come in, and we could share them,
Yeah.
and people could do with them what they want. It's just like,
Yeah.
yeah, I just felt like that's a responsibility, right, to just share it, and
I
that's,
think, yeah, like you said, the responsibility. I think if knowledge is out there, it really doesn't mean anything unless people are sharing it.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely, yeah. And yeah, I mean, if there's anything else you want to talk about, other than that, I don't want to keep
Yeah.
I'm- I mean, I don't
Well,
know
maybe
how much. Go ahead. Go
we
ahead.
could come back probably for like another segment another time, or like, kind of go off a different theme or something.
No, definitely.
Yeah.
Like anything you want to talk about. I'm really grateful. Like I knew, like earlier when I drew a blank,
Mhm.
because I do that. Like as I'm talking, I'm always feeling, right?
Mhm.
Like I feel like, how do I feel about, and I guess I have that protective thing, right? Like I want to make sure people are safe, right? Like I want to
Mhm.
make sure, like, even that, like I was just thinking, like, I don't want you to share anything that's gonna affect your work or anything like
Mhm.
that, right? So as I'm
Yeah.
asking you these questions, I'm like feeling like, should I ask that? Should I this? Should I that?
Yeah.
And I'm feeling
Well,
it
I
out.
would say just go for it, because I had mentioned to you, yeah, that there was that fear of like, oh well, I'm a therapist, and like, what if I lose credibility because I'm talking about this stuff? But then, like I said, that the universe rewards bravery, and
Mm,
we wouldn't be getting these messages if something higher than us didn't know that we were going to be sharing it.
yeah, definitely.
So maybe that's what it is. It's time, right?
You're
It's
right.
time.
You're right. No, and thank you. Thank you. I was really excited about this interview. Not that I wasn't, for anyone, I don't want anyone to feel bad that I wasn't excited about doing their interview,
Uh-huh.
but I just about this, because I feel it's it's important. I don't think, in my eyes, you wouldn't lose credibility. I think people would if anything, well, if anything, it will gain you credibility of
Yeah.
you being in touch with like you said, it's part of the human experience, like we're,
Right. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
At the end of the day, like, even though I'm a therapist, I am human. So
yeah,
I'm going to be experiencing things that other people probably don't want to talk about.
yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
maybe it'll I mean, give people the courage to share things with their therapist, like
Mhm.
maybe they'll be,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, maybe
Yeah,
if
I
they
was gonna
see this.
say,
Okay.
there's many times where I'll get patients who stop. It's usually the younger ones. They'll stop. They'll kind of go on to something, and they'll stop. It could be about a dream, or it could be about how they really feel about something, and
Mm,
they'll stop. And I'll ask them, why they're stopping, and a lot of it is well, I don't want to look crazy, or I don't want to be sent to the hospital or whatever. So I always make that agreement with them that unless they are going to tell me that, they're going to harm themselves in some way, that I'm not going to send them to the hospital for something they believe,
Mm,
you know? And
yeah.
so, and a lot of them do have, I have one in particular, she doesn't identify as like spiritual, but she has a lot of experiences that are spiritual,
Oh
you
wow.
know? And so it's very interesting. So just kind of helping people navigate through that, I think now is needed,
Mm,
because there is that label, of, well, then maybe I'll go to the hospital, you know?
mm,
Yeah.
definitely, definitely. And yeah, yeah, no, thank you for everything. I was gonna add something about the like how you had your conspiracy theory dream, but if I'll just save it for next time.
Yeah.
Because then keep dragging it out. But
Right.
just that to say that, like, well, I had told you briefly, how I had a dream too, that there was like this projection, and while everyone
Right.
was focused on that, like there were things
There was
happening.
something else.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there was things
Hmm.
happening, so it was like a distraction. So I'm sure that happened. I mean, I think everybody knows it. We keep getting distracted with all these things
Yeah.
while things are going on behind the scenes. And
Yeah, going off of that and like the conspiracy stuff, I'm not, I wouldn't consider myself somebody who like lives off of those things, or like I don't do any research on it. But after I had that dream, I was trying to figure out, what do I do with this? I felt like it was, whether it was a message for me to change things, or for, a larger group. Then I think this is also probably why I'm having issues like keeping food down right now, or like like it just, the thought of food right now is making me nauseous.
oh
And I
wow.
think it's kind of like, I think I'm going to be, I foresee myself changing my diet. And so I think there's something like we were talking before about, where people are eating so much fast food, or like food that they can afford versus healthy food.
Mm,
But what is really sustaining us and what we're putting into our bodies also affects our mental,
definitely.
and so I'm also on my social media, like on Instagram. I realized I was following like thousands of people, and a lot of them were, celebrities, or
Mm,
whatever. And I was like, if there were messages, like in my dream, that would come through, it would be from these people that everybody's looking at, right? And so
mm,
I actually started deleting, or like unfollowing all these people, and I got it down to like 300, and they're like
no,
people that I just know, or things that are more positive, that I'm following. And so I think that that was kind of part of the message, was like, be careful what you're taking in, even just visually. I mean, even as we're scrolling, and we see like a funny meme or something, and there's things that are funny, um but they're also kind of like trashy, and
yeah.
so it's like, what are we really taking in, and how is it affecting us, even if we're not aware of how it's affecting us?
Yeah, no, definitely. And that's, that jumped out at me when you shared the dream about how you were scrolling and everything was,
Negative.
negative or
Yeah.
violence or different things like that. Um, and yeah, no, I definitely see, like, yeah, how you said, even though things are funny, like we've all seen it, like how like things got super, even the over sexualization of things. Like people
Mhm.
may think it's nothing, like, but I'm sure it affects. There's a lot of psychological stuff behind that, which you probably
Right.
would be better at knowing about, how it affects
Yeah.
people. But
Yeah.
even that, right? Like, yeah, it may be funny stuff, but there's just so many things that I think would
But it's
distract.
also like, how much of it are we like being programmed or conditioned, because like there was a lot, like I'll be honest, there were a lot of people I was following that it was more about alcohol use or something.
Mm,
And so it's funny stuff, but at the same time I'm like, but do I need to like be in line with that, And so then I got it off my phone, because like
mm,
how much of that am I really absorbing?
yeah, yeah, definitely. No, thank you, thank you,
Mhm.
thank you. That's no, I guess on that note, that was a great
Yes.
last message to end on.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
no, thank you for that. Yeah, I definitely feel that's like, one of the most important things, right? We gotta watch what we consume, how you said, like,
Mhm.
and taking in. I mean, at the same time, it's like we are feeding ourselves through what we see, you know.
Yeah.
So,
Hmm.
and how it would affect the mental health. It makes perfect sense. So thank you. Yeah. So thank you so much.
Thank
I
you.
really enjoyed this. You know, yeah, hopefully we'll get to do it again soon.
Yeah.
If you have any dreams or anything that you
Yeah.
want to share, like this platform is open
Yep.
to you. So you know, we'll do that. And yeah, thank you.
Sounds
Anything,
good.
if
All right.
there's anything you want to add, go ahead. And
That's it. Thank you so much for having me.
thank you. It was my pleasure.
All
Okay.
right.
All right. Have a
All
great
right.
day.
Bye. Take care.
You too. Bye.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, sometimes you just feeling it, you know what I'm saying? You just feeling it. And I wanna feel this way forever.